Okay, so let's jump in. And what a privilege again to be learning with you. It should be a schus for all of you and all of us and all of Am Yisrael, the Siyata D'Shmaya. A packed parsha, as many of the parshias are. We have in the beginning of the parsha the inauguration of the Mishkan, which we're going to be focusing on now, which is the most incredible thing. And then we have, of course, the passage about Nadav and Avihu and that whole story of them bringing what's called an Eish Zara, what exactly it was that they did wrong, a couple of opinions in the Gemara, and so on, which unfortunately, in the context of this year, we're not going to be focusing on that part of the Parsha, but we'll save that for future years. Endless Torah about that. Um, and then toward the end of the Parsha, we learn about the Hilchos, the halachos of kashrus, and about Tuma and Tara with regard to which behemoths we can eat and which we need to stay away from. And that's what the second piece is about. If we get there, a very beautiful and interesting piece, all b'siyata d'shmaya. So let's jump in to the first piece from the Sefas Emes, which focuses on this element of the construction and the completion of the Mishkan. So he brings over here Isa B'taras Kehanim. It's brought in a medrash by Yehi Bayom Shemini, that it was on the eighth day. Of course, a reference to the day after the 7 days of preparation of inauguration. Finally, on the eighth day, the Mishkan was finally inaugurated. And the Taras Kehanim, the medrash, tells us an interesting thing. Take a look very carefully at the first word that introduces this narrative of the inauguration of the Mishkan, and the word is Vayehi. Now, the word Vayihi is an interesting word because oftentimes, and the Gemara Megillah has a back and forth about this, sometimes you find it in the context of pain, of tsar, when something negative happens, something sad happens. We find the word Vayihi, for example, we just had in the Megillah, Vayihi b'me'ach Hashverosh, certainly wasn't introducing something happy. Vayihi b'me'ach Hashverosh spoke about the party, that was the cause of the whole decree. But there are other times when you do find that the word Vayihi is in the context of Simcha. So the Gemara clarifies there that every time we see the word Vayihi and it's followed by B'yamei, that's a Lashon of Tsar, no matter what. Every time you see Vayihi and it's B'yamei, Lashon Tsar. However, Vayihi alone, it depends on the context. And so the word that's being used here is Vayehi Bayom Hashmini. Obviously, contextually speaking, this was a really beautiful day. What an incredible thing. The Hashras Hashchina, after all the construction and after all the heartfelt contributions of a nation that was coming to do tshuva, as we're going to learn in this piece for the Cheta Egal. What an incredible joy. So certainly there's no question that the word Vayehi in this context is a lashon of Simcha. So the Medrash focuses on that, and it says, "Vayihi b'yom hashmini," and it was on this eighth day, "Shahaya simcha lefanav b'maraim ki yayim shenibru shamayim va'aretz." There was joy before Hashem in the upper realms that was equivalent to the joy that Hashem experienced the day that creation began to unfold, the day that heaven and earth were created. Now, how do we know that there was simcha when heaven and earth were created? So again, we have to focus on this word. Ksiv Hasam, it says at the end of the first day of creation, Vayihi Erev, Vayihi Voker, it was the first day. So incredible thing, we're over there, we're assuming that the context of creation is also a context of joy, which itself is a very special thing, because sometimes you look around in the world, especially today, and we could have our doubts about whether it was the greatest thing for the world to have been created or not, and how things are either coming together, chas v'shalom. So often it looks like things are falling apart. But if we hear the medrash, it's clear to the medrash. It's clear to the medrash that if we had to look for a proof text where the word vayehi means joy in a context of a narrative, vayehi erev, vayehi vayker, what a simcha. And the medrash says, connect that word vayehi erev to this word vayehi bayom hashmini, and the medrash learns that there's a gezer shava, there's a connection between these two words. There was joy before Hashem on the day that the Mishkan was created, just like there was joy by Hashem with the creation of heaven and earth. And this is, of course, just on the surface of it. The Sefas Emes is going to take us much deeper. But on the surface of it, it should be clear already from many other sources, and the Gemara at the end of Brachas as well, that there is a deep correlation between the building of the Mishkan and the creation of the world. Very deep connection between them. The Gemara Brachas tells us, I think we may have talked about this in the past, Betzalel, who was in charge of taking all the different elements and coordinating and bringing together all the different elements of the Mishkan, Betzalel needed to know the secret of permutating letters, which are also numbers, which I've been exploring lately, because the Hebrew letters are also numbers. So that's very, very deep, right? The deep formula. Betzalel had to understand how to put different numbers, letters together in the same way that heaven and earth were created with letters, with numbers. And so over there you find already a deep connection. The Zohar Kadosh tells us that whatever exists in the meta unfolding of the creation of heaven and earth must exist in some microcosmic form in the Mishkan. There is a deep connection between the world at large and the Mishkan. And then, of course, the Beis HaMikdash as well is a microcosm of the whole entire world. It's not just a temple. The nations of the world can't understand, right? Like what it is, not just a temple. A temple is a space where you go, to recognize a higher being. Generally speaking, in Islam, the mosques are largely empty. They're spaces for prayer, which is a very holy thing, very beautiful thing. Right? Christianity is more ritualistic over the course of history. But the Beis Hamikdash wasn't a temple in the sense of, okay, here's a place to go, it's a shrine. There was stuff going on. There was stuff going on that the human mind could never have constructed. The concepts, the shulchan and the kiyar and the mizbeach, like the human mind, these are not images and these are not experiences that originated in a limited human brain. Because what for? Like what for? And the positioning of all of it in the menorah and each and every, these are kalim that originated in the mind of the divine, as it were. These are deep, deep spiritual sources for all flows within creation. And the Beis Hamikdash is the microcosm of all the spiritual energies that come together to create the natural world. And the same is true for the Mishkan. So I'm just pointing out that just on a simple level, here is yet another source that points to the connection between the Mishkan and the creation of the world. And again, it's one of many. So if you ever need to do a presentation on this, this is another source to throw in where you find in Chazal, it's a given that there's a deep correlation between the creation of the Mishkan and the creation of Shemayim Va'aretz, so much so that there was joy before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as the pasuk says, Vayehi b'yom hashmini, as there was by the creation of the world, Vayehi era, Vayehi Vaiker. Okay, that's the Medrash. And about that day, the pasuk says in Shir Hashirim, Sena ure'ena b'nos Tzion, go out and see b'nos Tzion, daughters of Tzion, of Zion, of Am Yisrael, B'melech Shloima, to the king, B'melech Shloima, what the Medrash says is all talking about Hashem, Melech Shalom Shaloi, it's all a reference to Hashem, Ba'atara she'itra imai, and take a look at the crown with which his mother crowned him, B'yayim chasunasai, on the day of his wedding, U'b'yayim simchas libay, and on the day of the rejoicing of his heart. And the Medrash says this pasuk, as understood, is referring to Hashem, crowned by his mother. It's a difficult thing to, what does that mean, crowned by his mother? Hashem has a mother. What does this mean? Crowned by his mother, imai, b'yayim chasunasai, on his wedding day, b'yayim simchas libay, and on the day of the rejoicing of his heart. And over here, take a look. Again, it's all based on similar wording in the psukim. Again, why is this pasuk? Maybe this pasuk is talking about something else. We know this pasuk is talking about something else because the Gemara at the end of Tainis tells us that b'yayim simchas b'yayim chasunasai is matan Torah. So we know that these dates are referring to other things as well. But the Medrash is making a connection between the word bayayim, simchas libay, biyayim chasunasai, and the word vayehi, biyayim hashmini. Again, you have to focus on the wording. The wording is incredibly precise. And so the Medrash is drawing a connection between the word bayayim in the context of bayayim hashmini, and this word bayayim in the context of chasunasai, simchas libay, the rejoicing of Hashem's heart, kiviyachol, the day of his wedding, kiviyachol, the day when he is crowned by his mother, kiviyachol. What does all this mean? Okay, that's just a medrash. Those 3 lines of a medrash. Says the Heilige Sefas Emes, chusa yagen aleinu. What a privilege to learn his words. What a privilege to learn Torah. Wow, unbelievable privilege. Not simple. It's really not simple. Unbelievable. So he says like this, Ki b'nei Yisrael himshichu ata derech chadash ba'oil. Something new was being revealed in the world at this moment. The moment of the inauguration of the Mishkan marked the opening of a brand new chapter, the unfolding of a brand new stream within creation. Something new was starting. Ki b'nei Yisrael imshichu ata derech chadash ba'olam. Am Yisrael are drawing down a new path in the world. What is that new path? I hinted to it earlier. What is the unfolding of the creation of the Mishkan? What is that? Where did it come in history? So, of course, all the Svarim make the correlation, and the Midrashim and the Gemara makes the connection between the Chet Egel that was soon followed by the building of the Mishkan, to understand that whatever Am Yisrael um, um, blemished, whatever it was that they corrupted in the Cheta Egel, which is extremely deep, and we have to look in all the Mefarshim to understand what actually happened in the Cheta Egel. Because obviously they weren't dancing just around a silly cow. What is it? What did they want? What were they looking for? What was the deeper meaning? But whatever that was, it was rectified in the Mishkan. So that means that the creation of the Mishkan, the inauguration of the Mishkan, is al yidei hatshuva sha'asu, is a reference to collective national tshuva that all of Am Yisrael are doing. And this tshuva opened a new chapter. It wasn't just an event. It was the beginning and the unfolding and revealing of a completely new way of connecting to Hashem. As the Gemara tells us, it was a preparation for all future generations. The Gemara says such an incredible thing, a confounding thing. I believe it's a Gemara in Saita, a confounding thing. Am Yisrael were not fitting in and of themselves, so to speak. That wasn't their madrega to do such an avera. It's a shocking thing. So why did they do it? They were pushed into it. Ki im lahoyres tshuva l'rabim. Hashem orchestrated this with all the ramifications, repercussions, and all the language that we use. And I use that word specifically. Language is fractal in nature. Language is different letters that are expressed over time. And that's why the human being is so defined by language, as we've said, I think in previous year, and the human being, maybe even last week, or a few weeks ago, language is the human. The human is language, because we exist under the constriction of time, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is beyond time and beyond space. We experience the everythingness unfolding in this strange experience called time and space. By Hashem, everything is at once. It just is. It's all there. And there are many different mishalim that we can use to try to understand that, but ultimately it's beyond our understanding. We don't know what that means, beyond time, beyond space. So just to clarify, when we speak about all the repercussions and Hashem ordained for this to happen, and then it happened, and then afterwards, there is no before, there is no after. It just is, right? It's replicating patterns that continue to unfold, that are already incorporated and included in the original pattern, as it were. So just to keep that in mind, but we don't live on that level. So we live under time and we live under space. So we can talk about this having been something that happened then, that was a preparation l'dairos for all of creation, so that if there was ever a generation of Am Yisrael who had done something collectively, we had strayed, we would have the model of what it might look like for us to return to Hashem, to return to ourselves, to return to a healthy life, which is what tshuva is. And the pasuk the Sefas continues with the pasuk, "Ve'elikim asa adam yashar." HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the human being yashar, was supposed to be just straight, doing for HaKadosh Baruch Hu what Hashem needed from Adam and Chava to be doing, which is revealing his presence in whatever aspect of the created world that it was. Of course, Gan Eden was much loftier. I saw brought from the Arizal. Incredible thing. That in Gan Eden, the donkeys were more conscious than today's human being. The chayas, the impure animals, had a greater level of consciousness and functionality than today's human beings have. And they learned it out from a Gemara that Pinchas ben Yair had this incredible donkey that was conscious, if someone left a lost object on it, a sandal, so it wouldn't move, it had to go and return it back to the person. That and the Gemara says in Heim Kibnei Adam, if the previous generations are like people, anu kichamoirin, we are like donkeys. And then the Gemara clarifies, which I always found pretty funny. I thought it was like the Gemara can be very humorous sometimes. We can't take it so seriously. We should take it seriously. But they had a sense of humor that so like I thought it was like something funny where they throw in they're like people, we're like donkeys. V'loy kichamoir shel Pinchas ben Yair, the Gemara says, and not like the donkey of Pinchas ben Yair. We're real donkeys. So, but it's a very deep thing because the Arizal says that the chamar of Reb Pinchas ben Yair was on the madrega of the chamarim from Gan Eden when they were even higher than human beings. And so from there we should understand on what level Adam, right, who presumably was even loftier than those donkeys, certainly. Imagine what level Adam Rishon was on. Like we can't grasp what that is. We absolutely can't grasp what that is. So Adam Rishon was created along with Chava to do for Hashem what Hashem needed from them to do, which is to reveal His light in an aspect of a created world that was limited, where there was a tree of good and evil. There was another tree called the Eitz HaChaim, where there were different aspects. There was Nahar, there was Gam, there was Eden, there were experiences of separateness, multiplicity, and there Adam Rishon was supposed to heed the will of the divine in that realm. And the whole creation was created for the world to be lit up with Hashem's presence, with Hashem's glory. That's why the world is, so that we can come to recognize Hashem, so we can come to be grateful for all the gifts that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us, so that we can encounter Hashem in a billion different ways throughout the journey of the human experience, from the moment that we're born until the moment that our neshama leaves our body at 120, and every moment in between, different ways of seeing the incredible presence of Hashem manifest in so many different aspects in a way that we never could have seen it if we would just be sparks of the divine subsumed within the divine himself. We never could have processed it in the way that you and I have the privilege of processing it. That's even greater than the angels can process it. And that's how the world was supposed to be. Adam and Chava created Yashar, to heed the will of Hashem, that one commandment that included everything else. And they were put in the garden, la'avda l'shamra, and the Gemara says, la'avda is the root of all mitzvahs haseh, l'shamra is the root of all mitzvahs lois haseh. That's it. They were just supposed to do their thing. And the whole world was created l'chvaydai bara. And this is called the path of the tzaddikim, of the righteous. That's how the world was created. No one needed to ever make a mistake. That would have accomplished whatever it was that Hashem needed, kibiyachal, to create, to reveal His presence in the world in a perfect way. And Hashem would still get what He needed, kibiyachal, from people perfect, who had an aspect of Yetzer Hara that wasn't even inside of them, but that existed externally in the form of the Nachash, and not listening, not eating from that particular tree. And that would have been all the tikkunim of everything that we could imagine Hashem needing to have created the world in order to kiviyachol get whatever that means. That would have been it. Adam would have earned the good, if you want to go like the Ramchal, or it would have been creating for Hashem a dira b'tachtonim, a dwelling place, revealing His presence in the world. It would have all been good. And that's called a derech l'tzadikim. I want to stress these words again. Derech l'tzadikim. Called the path of the righteous, as the pasuk says, Yesharim darchei Hashem. Hashem's ways are Yashar, just like the other pasuk it says, Asa likimus Adam, again Yashar, tzadikim yalchubam. And that's the path on which the righteous walk, who never make mistakes and rectify their souls and are connected to Hashem on the deepest level. Okay, so this is the reference that we usually make to the derech, right? When we talk about the derech. We're talking about the derech of tzaddikim, the way that we assume that things are supposed to look, the way that we assume that children are supposed to behave, the way that we assume that teenagers are supposed to develop. And this is the derech. Derech, that's why I'm stressing this word. Derech l'tzaddikim. Now listen carefully, because this is so crucial. And it's something that we've discussed in the past. For sure, if you're learning The Lost Princess or have learned The Lost Princess, you're aware. Later chapters, which most people don't end up getting to, but the later chapters, 15 and 16, talk about the way of Yosef HaTzadik, but we also speak about the way of David HaMelech. So listen to this. Abel b'nei Yisrael tiknu ata. That at this moment in history, after the most colossal, devastating, incomprehensible, what do they call it? A catastrophic failure, right? A catastrophic failure of the Bnei Yisrael right after Har Sinai, panim al panim, like seeing Hashem, face to face. Avodah Zara, Eila lehecha Yisrael, you out of your minds? The most catastrophic failure. Tiknu ata, with the inauguration of the Mishkan. Listen even more carefully to this word, derech. Now they are forging another derech. And this derech doesn't look like the derech of the tzaddikim. It is off that derech. But what do you know? There are two drachim. There are two ways. And the one way, everything goes well, and that's what we hope for. But there is another way. And the Bnei Yisrael were mechadish in this moment with the Mishkan, and that's ultimately was the prototype for the Beis HaMikdash, which was the place where every person, no matter what they did, and no matter how much they sinned, and no matter how detached they had become, they brought a korban, they walked out of there, Kaddish Vitar, like the day that they came out of their mother's womb. The Mishkan is a derech afilu lahanech shalom, even to the stragglers. V'nis akmu, and even those who became twisted, yichlu lachsar, they can return. This is their derech. They can return l'derech hayashar, and using this derech, they can go back to that ultimately derech hatzadikim al yedei tshuva, through the path of tshuva. And here he says the most incredible thing. Mamish, so deep. So deep. Who created this path of tshuva? Who created this path of tshuva? When the world was created originally, everything was perfect. Everything was arranged in perfection. And there was no other element necessary. Everything was already embedded into the creation of the world. Everything was fully manifested. Everything was revealed. And Adam and Chava needed to do what they needed to do, and that's the whole thing. So it turns out, says the Sefas Emes, which is incredibly, incredibly deep. V'derech zu hutzerchu hatachtoinim lahoitzi mikoyach ala poel ba'atzma. Hashem is perfect. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in and of himself, kivyachol b'chvoido va'atzma, and there's a difficult concept. Hashem is the infinite. Hashem is perfect. There's no lack in godliness. But if Hashem would create a being who is also perfect, meaning to say, who in and of his own choice or her own choice could carry on making all the right choices, and they become a Tselem Elokim, and everything's good. That's the derech of tzaddikim. It's the Yosef HaTzadik, the one who doesn't sin. But as a mini Tselem Elokim, which is the secret of free choice, that we're not just receivers, we can be the masters of our destiny, that we in and of ourselves, that we are not God. We are godly, but we are not God. We could make mistakes. Then we could reveal this incredibly deep path that Hashem, again, in and of his infinite godliness and perfection, could never have just created. Okay, here's a mistake, and here's the tshuva. Hashem, it's like God create a rock he can't pick up. It's beyond that. God is perfect. But I'm not perfect, and Am Yisrael aren't perfect. And the nation that received the Torah, that Dar HaMidbar, weren't perfect, and they made a massive mistake. And in so doing, they had the capacity to reveal something new in creation that wasn't revealed before this. It's unbelievable. Read it again. It was specifically the lower realms that needed to bring this novel energy into the world that Hashem in and of himself didn't create the world with. We reveal this aspect of creation. Mikoyach el hapoel, we bring it from potential because it always existed, but we actualize it. El hapoel ba'atzmam ki darchei Hashem yesharim, because the way of Hashem is perfect. But Hashem created a human being that in and of our own journey, and I can say more broadly, in and of the journey of every human who ever lived, and of all of human history from beginning of time to the end of time, we would be revealing this unique hanhaga that there is within Hashem kiviyachol in and of himself, to recognize all apparent blemishes as being possible catalysts for an even higher level of connection. Which, if we remember what the Medrash Tanchuma says that I hinted to earlier, that says that one of the reasons for the creation of the world is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu yearned, he desired to have a dwelling place in the lower realms of creation. So it turns out that Adam and Chava in Gan Eden, that's revealing Hashem, in the created world. It's not heaven. It's not the Olam HaYetzirah. It's the world of Avasiyah. It's the created world. But to be able to find Hashem in a place of having found the opposite, Kiviyachol, Oved Avodah Zarah, and from that place we find it in our hearts to return, that gives Hashem something that Adam and Chava couldn't have given him otherwise, certainly not on a national level. That was on an individual level, but on a national level, what an opportunity. And that's only something that we could give him in and of ourselves as imperfect beings who are the ones that are revealing this reality. The possibility to find God even in what appears to be the void of godliness. Skip the parentheses for now. It's just a bit confusing, and I just spoke that out a little bit because he says really tshuva did come before the world. It's true. So tshuva came before the world. It was in potential, but we're the ones that activated. Okay. Now we could understand the Medrash in a much deeper way. It's not simply that the Medrash is that the Mishkan rather is the microcosm for the creation of the world, like we said earlier, so we could understand that there was joy by Hashem when he created the Mishkan, like when he created the world. He says much deeper. When Am Yisrael built the Mishkan, and in so doing, the Mishkan was the embodiment of their returning to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of their tshuva, which was only possible if they had sinned, which was not built into the original creation of the world when Adam and Chava were not supposed to eat from the Eitz Hadas. It turns out that in this moment, when the Mishkan is inaugurated and tshuva is completed, it is as if heaven and earth are created anew. Meaning to say, right now is revealed within creation something different, a new derech, a new hanhaga that we wouldn't have known about otherwise, when previously it was just the derech, like we said, the derech of tzaddikim. Now we understand there's something called a derech of the Balei Tshuva. Ki zeh tikkun ha'olam. Says the Sefas Emes, it is this revelation, it's this path, this capacity, this ability to return to Hashem from a place of distance that is the rectification of the whole world. That ultimately, if we are living in a post-sin world, which all of us are, after the Chet Adam and Chava, everything is broken. Eating from the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra means that they processed the das, the intimate mixing of good and evil, so that throughout creation we would need to make birurim, clarifications, and hopefully learn lessons along the way, so that as creation unfolds, we become wiser and deeper. We have more data. We have more experience with what it means to be human. We learn our lessons. Hopefully things evolve. They can also devolve, but hopefully as a whole, society evolves. And we can't look with tunnel vision over the last 20 years. I mean, things come and go. They come in waves. They flow. Things are getting worse. Things are getting better. It's like that argument about global warming. Like maybe, every million or so years, like the world heats up a lot, and like we don't have data to know what happens over extended periods of time. It's a story that's unfolding. Hashem is running the world. Hashem is running the world. Ultimately, we have to believe the world is getting better. But in order for the world to get better, it has to rely on this new path, where it's even a possibility for something that was broken to become fixed in such a way that it's even more rectified now than it was in the beginning. And that's the secret of the entire creation of the world, from beginning to end, is ultimately for the purpose of revealing HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence, even in the place where we think he is most absent, which is the concept of giving him, kiviyachol, a resting place, a dwelling place, a dira bitachtonim, in that place that's called the pits, that place of the lower realms. Now we can understand why the Medrash tells us Zehu Shekasav, and that's why the Medrash connects this with the pasuk She'itralai Imai. Right? We go back to the beginning. Like we said, Seno Re'ena B'noi Siyon. Ba Melech Shloima, go out and see the Melech Shloima, the king of completion. That's really what it means. The king of kings, who is so perfect that in and of himself he couldn't have created the world with the thing called tshuva. Right? It needed to be manifest through the lower realms. He's B'melech Shloima. He's the perfect king. And he had great joy, Bayayim Simchas Libai, which is connected and correlated, like we said, to the word Bayayim Hashmini, which is also connected to the word Vayehi, which is Vayehi Erev, Vayehi Voker, which we said links the creation of the Mishkan to the creation of the world. But it's a day of great rejoicing for Hashem. What happened on that day? Be'atara she'itraloi imai. It's the day when his mother gave him his crown. Now that we understand the Medrash more deeply, that it's not stam that there happens to be a connection between the Mishkan and the creation of the world, but much deeper. What was revealed with the creation of the Mishkan means the derech of tshuva is like a recreation of the whole world and lays the foundation for the ultimate fixing of heaven and earth that are broken after the Chet Adam Rishon. So it's literally like the creation of the world again. Says the Gemara, you know what it says, the Sefas Emes, you know what this pasuk means? She'itraloi imai, crowned by his mother. Who is the word imai referencing in that pasuk? Says the Medrash, it's a reference, such a beautiful Medrash. The Medrash says, Hashem loved Am Yisrael so much that he called us his daughter. And it brings psukim for all of this. Biti, HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls us his daughter. Then the Medrash continues, Hashem loved us even deeper. He called us his sister, which is like an equal level, which we're learning about in our Yichud Spodidus Shirim that we just started last week, where we were learning about that relationship with Hashem that's like a friend, that's like kiviyachol, an equal, so to speak. Achoisi rayasi. And then the Medrash says, and it's like a strange thing, and it's very deep. The Medrash says, Loizaz mechavava, Kadosh Baruch Hu didn't move away from loving Am Yisrael until he called us Imai, his mother. Shocking thing. That's the Medrash. And it says, because we see in this pasuk, Ba'atara she'itraloi Imai is a reference to Am Yisrael. We are God's mother. Kiviyachol. Bizarre things. Very difficult to understand this. So in the context of what we're learning, how do we understand the correlation between that concept, Am Yisrael as the mother of Hashem Kiviyachol, and this revelation of a new path in the world? So he says that's exactly what it means. Kara imai shehimshichu derech chadash. He says, what does it mean, a mother? Fundamentally, the mother gives birth to the child. The mother sustains the child. The mother is in a giver position vis-a-vis the child. The ultimate giver is the mom. Ultimate giver. So the Medrash is telling us at this moment that the Bnei Yisrael collectively revealed something in creation that Hashem himself, the Melech Shahashalem Shaloi, the complete, perfect king, couldn't have had otherwise. Hashem says, you're my mother. You're giving to me something that I wouldn't have had. You are unfolding, again, and Hashem is beyond time and space, so all this is happening in a second. We use the word in a second because the closest thing we could think to just instantly, but it's beyond instantly. We don't have the concepts to handle what that means, you know. But from our perspective, Hashem says this whole drama of the 6,000 years of history and then moving into Shabbos, and then this whole thing from beginning of time to the end of time with all the hundreds of thousands of millions of souls that are all Gilgulim one after the other, and all the different stories and tiny, teeny details of life that we think are arbitrary. All of these are strands woven into the great tapestry that gives God what? What is this Hanhaga that's unfolding within the womb of the divine, which it is? What is it? It's this point. It's the manifestation of the ultimate infinity of Hashem that's revealed specifically when his presence is found in the place where it looks like it's not. That's it. And in that sense, we give Hashem something, so to speak, that he wouldn't have in and of himself as himself. So Hashem says, you're my mother. Kara imai. Hashem says, you're my mom. You give me something. I rely on you. And that's the deeper meaning of the pasuk that we say in davening, Yoshev Tehilos Yisrael. Hashem sits on the prayers of Am Yisrael. What is the concept of sitting? The concept of sitting is relying on. We're not tense with our bodies, you know, like expecting the chair to fall so that we can catch ourselves, you know, with our hands down close to the floor. We sit down on a chair, we rely on the chair. That's what it means. Yoshev Tehilos Yisrael. Hashem says, I rely on you. Tnu ois lelikim. We give something to Hashem. We give him strength. Imai. Imai. What's the concept of the crown? I was deliberating whether to go into this or not, because if I say the word crown and start to go down this route, we'll for sure not get to the second piece. But I think it's fine. I think it's fine that this piece was broader than I thought. I'm going to double click just on the word crown for a minute, because it's so deep. This is mamish deep. What's the meaning of the crown? Because we understand imai, but what does this have to do with the crown? I don't even know if we have time now to get into this whole sugya now. I'm just going to say Rashi Prakim very, very briefly. I'll try. This is really the deepest. One of the midos with which HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself to the world is the midah that's called keser, which is Hashem's crown, so to speak, but it's a reference to one of the elements that Hashem revealed, the way in which he created the world, and it refers to the will of Hashem. It's incredibly deep. It refers to the will of Hashem. And that's why it's the first revelation, because that's all there is. First, God wanted the world. That is revealed, that wanting is revealed in this aspect called keser, called crown. Not getting into the depth of it. The last midah of this 10 sephira or midah system is called malchus. It's called malchus. Malchus is associated with the final product, right? As we might imagine, two sides of two polar opposites. So the first is wanting to create, and the last step is going to be the unfolded and completed manifested creation. Malchus is also related to the Shekhinah, the indwelling presence of the divine, the neshama of the world, as it were, the life force that brings everything to life. Whenever spring does get here at some point, everything will begin to grow again. And it's also connected to Am Yisrael. Am Yisrael collectively are synonymous, very deep, with the Shekhinah. Our neshamos are a chelek elokam imal, and human consciousness, the Jewish nation, is the concept of Malchus as well. Keser is totally Hashem, kiviyachol. Before anything else, Malchus is the unfolding of divinity as it expresses itself within a created realm. Malchus. Now, when we act in relation to the will of the divine, when we keep the Torah, which has 248 mitzvahs aseh, positive commandments, 365 mitzvahs lo aseh, negative commandments, and 7 either mitzvahs d'Rabbanan or Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach. So 613 plus 7 is 620 gematria keser. That's literally the gematria of keser. So keser is the totality of the will of the divine, which is incredible. And we, Malchus, on the other side of the spectrum, are doing what we're supposed to do. So incredible. We are reflecting in this world the Keser of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We are aligned with the will of the Creator. But what happens when we don't? What happens when we break away from the will of Hashem? So the Medrash tells us, this is so deep, now you can understand it deeper. The Medrash says, Azus. Azus means brazen-faced. Chutzpah. Something that, I mean, how do you define, brazenness? Had trouble, also I gave a share on this a couple of weeks ago. I couldn't find exactly the right word for azus. Azus is when a person has to do a certain thing because morally, ethically, and so on and so forth, they're expected to behave in a certain way, and then they deviate. Says the Gemara, you know what azus means? You know what the ultimate definition of azus is? And it's so deep here, you're able to see how the whole Gemara is full of Kabbalah. It's not two separate things. The Kabbalistic tradition it saturates the Talmud. You have to know how to find it. People think, oh, there's mysticism and there's rituality, ritual law. There's no such thing. It's all of the Haggadah, the Gra writes, is all deepest secrets of Kabbalah. So the Gemara says azus is defined as malchusa Beloy Taga, which means literally a king, Malchus, who doesn't have a crown, Beloy Taga. Now, on a simple level, if you want to read the Gemara very simply, you could understand, yeah, that's a Gevaldiga Azus, a person's reigning sovereign over other people, and he doesn't even have the crown. You're like, what is that? That's he's an imposter. He's not with what is he king? That's really that's not really what it means. That's what it means on a simple level. But based on what we're learning, it's the deepest thing. The definition of Azus is for a Jew, Malchus, to be living out of alignment with the Keser of Hashem. That's Malchus Beloy Taga. That's Malchus disconnected from Keser, which is the will of the divine. That's the biggest Azus in the world. How could we be living not aligned with the will of our Creator and Sustainer who's giving us life every split second? That's Azus. So what should we do? What should we do when a person lives in a way that's been disconnected and he's not been perfectly, or she's not been perfectly successful in manifesting the 613 mitzvahs and the Sheva mitzvahs, of the Rabbanan or B'nai in every way of etc. It says, like, what should we do? So the answer is tshuva. And in the aspect of tshuva, and this is the deepest thing in the world, we say every Friday night, Eishes Chayil, in that sense, Am Yisrael, who are called Eishes Chayil, become Ateres Bal. Which in a certain very, very deep way means that even though you're right, initially it looked like we broke from the will of the divine, in doing tshuva, it's so deep. It turns out that retrospectively, everything that unfolded was exactly aligned with the Kadosh Baruch Hu's will and never could have happened otherwise. We rectify the Azus. And in that sense, Eishes Chayil, which is a reference to Malchus, that's why we sing it on Shabbos, because Shabbos is the Shabbos Malka. Shabbos is the queen, is the meat of Malchus. Eishes Chayil becomes Ateres Bal. Very, very deep. So that means that everything that we're saying now is plugged back into this very pasuk. The Melech Shloima is the perfect king, is the Ein Sof, is the infinite. He can't have this hanhaga of brokenness and then being revealed through that there's light of Hashem in there and then returning. No, not within himself. So Hashem creates a void, and Hashem in that void sends down a ray of godliness, as the Arizal explains, and all the worlds are created until we have Adam, Rishon, and Chava, and all human beings that come after them. And they're going to break from the will of the divine. And in that sense, the creation of the world is incomplete, in a sense, because it's too complete. It's too perfect. And so the ultimate revelation of God's presence is not able to be revealed in the lower places. So then Adam and Chava sin individually, Am Yisrael sin collectively, and in doing tshuva, there's joy before our Kadosh Baruch Hu by Yom, which is by Yom Hashmini, by Yom Simchas Libai, like the day of the creation of heaven and earth, by Yehi by Yom Hashmini, by Yehi Erev, by Yehi Vaiker, because heaven and earth are recreated anew. And that's all reflected in the Pasuk that tells us Tsena ure'ena b'nos Tzion. You can even say that it goes so deep that it's hinted to in these words also. Tsena, even when Am Yisrael tsena, even when we go out, meaning even when we leave the realm of Kedusha, even when there's an experience of Azus, Malchusa B'loi Taga, even when it seems like we're outside the realm of where we need to be. But ure'ena, you can find Hashem there too. There's a way of coming home. There's a way of doing tshuva. There is always a way of doing tshuva. The Melech Shloima, so Shloima, the king, in that moment has the greatest joy. You know why? Ba'atara she'itraloi imai. Because in that minute, the Eishes Chayil, which is Am Yisrael, gives Hashem his crown, reveals the pnimius ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that it turns out that this was all part of Kiviyachol, the plan, so that it would unfold in such a way that the human being needs to experience moments of disconnect and find it within that experience to somehow reconnect. And in that moment, boom, the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu extends into a brand new arena that never would have been, that even here Hashem's light can reach. And that's the Atara. That's the Keser of Hashem, the Eishes Chayil that gives Hashem Ateres Bala. And therefore we're called Imai. Hashem calls us his mother. B'yom Chasunasa, B'yom Simchas Libai. Now let's finish up. And therefore it's written by Yom Hashmini. Why did all of this have to take place on the 8th day? Because what is 7? 7 we know is nature. How do we know that 7 is nature? There are many different patterns of 7 in nature. There are 7 colors of the rainbow, like we've said this many times, 7 continents, 7 planets, or classical planets at least, 7 musical notes, 7 classical metals, many different aspects of 7 that show up throughout nature. But if there was one that was paramount, obviously, we would say it is the 7 days of the week, which is the structure of time that is bound to the structure of space-time. Now, these two things are really one dimension. So ultimately, the whole thing is 7. 7, 7, 7, 7 days. In every culture throughout history, they split the week into 7 days. Everybody. Time is 7. Time is 7, and that's nature. Now, according to the natural realm of things, the way the world was created, again, in the way of us, Elikim Adam Yashar, there's no room for sinning and for tshuva. That's not built into the system of the natural hanhaga of creation. It turns out that tshuva reveals something that's beyond the natural world. And if we talk about time as being hinted to in the number 7, then tshuva, which means the capacity to go back in time. I gave a share on this for the Chizuk mission a couple of years ago. We talked about Yom Kippur, the thing at the beginning of, not this past Yom Kippur, 2 Yom Kippurs ago, going back in time, right? We spoke about the eraser, and that's why tshuva was kadma la'olam we spoke about. If you remember that year, we go back in time. It breaks all boundaries of how we think time ordinarily flows. We can literally go back in time. We go beyond the structure of time. Therefore, says the Sefas Emes, the inauguration of the Mishkan that encapsulates all of these concepts, it's got to be by Yom Hashmini. It's got to be on the 8th day. Because it's revealing now a new hanhaga that's beyond the created world. It's beyond the 7 days of creation. The kama gadla hatshuva, and how great is tshuva indeed. As Chazal say, gadol hachet. How did we know how terrible the Chet Ega was? That before the Chet Ega, what happened? Marik Kvoid Hashem, the presence of Hashem's glory was revealed in front of everybody. The Achar Chet, and after Chet Egel, it says that Moshe's face was shining to the point that the Yir Migeshes they loved, they couldn't even come close to Moshe. Says the Medrash, they were on such a low level of Hilpnei Asarser Yir Migeshes they loved. They couldn't even look at Moshe. Forget about they couldn't look at Hashem in the face. So Kamoikein Achar Sha'asa Tshuva that rectifies everything, that doesn't just fill in the cracks, so now it still looks all distorted, but somehow like it still works, but it's broken clearly. No. It is total rectification. Ki'ilu, nothing broke. And not only that nothing broke, things become even stronger. So of course, the pasuk is going to use the same words to describe the revelation of godliness in the Medrash and the Mishkan, as it used to describe the revelation of Hashem on Har Sinai. Vayeira kvod Hashem al kol ha'am, the same thing. Hashem's glory is revealed. It's like nothing happened. Oh, but something happened. Something did happen. You know for whom? For Hashem. We'll get back to where we need to go. All of creation will get back to Adam and Chava Koydem Achet, and the surface will look like, well, we started here, we went down there, we came back there. No. In the unfolding process of history, with all the micro narratives and micro narratives of nations and individuals and families and communities, with all of the different striyot that go on that seem to be so inane and unfortunate and challenging and limiting and experiences limitation and so on and so forth. As we tortured souls experience all of these vicissitudes and these narrow constrictions, and we do so holding on to Hashem, holding on to Emunah through it all, we'll get back to the same place. But in the process, and again, all this is happening beyond time, in the process, meaning the sum totality of everything that is, we will have revealed the way that the infinite is so infinite that it can be found even in the deepest, darkest depths of finitude, even in the deepest, darkest void and absence of Hashem. Hashem is present there too. And that's the Sefas Emes. Small little paragraph, but it's a huge idea. And can I just quickly read through the Rav Kook? I think we have a couple of minutes left. Just very quickly read through the Rav Kook, and then we'll open it up for comments, questions. Rav Kook says, Mima amakim ba tshuva. Tshuva rises from the depths. Me'oimek gadol, from such a deep depth. Zeh she'ein hanefesh hayechidas ha'ishis legabei chativa b'fnei atzma. That in relation to that depth, the human individual soul is not considered an individual element. Ala hemshech, the individual is seen as channeling that stream that's so beyond it. Mehagdula hahavayatit haklalit. We are just a revelation of the ultimate flow that runs through every creation. Haratzin shel tshuva, the individual's desire to be holier, to be better, to be more elevated, to live healthier in whatever aspect. Nogea baratzin ha'olami. It touches upon the underlying will of all of creation. And it triggers, it taps into the Mikar Ha'elyon, the loftiest source for the will of all of creation to rise. And once you tap it in your own little life and our own little lives, we open up a little needle, a little tiniest spot, little space to say, I want to be better. We activate in that moment the mighty roaring stream, this incredible like flow of the tshuva of the world. And it turns toward lehetiv, to the good. Miyad nechalim rab, in many different smaller trickles and streams. Shoitvim b'chomali hayesh legalis hatoy. We activate this stream that underlies everything, and we can literally impact the whole world. We can allow the channels to open up, and for this flow to saturate everything that is, to reveal the good lehetiv lakol, and to reveal the way in which Hashem is good to all. And that's what Chazal mean when they say Gedola Tshuva, great is Tshuva, Shemavia Refuah La'olam. It brings healing to the whole world. The Yachid Shasa Tshuva, and the individual that does Tshuva, Moichlim Lai, they're forgiven, Ula Olam Kulai. And now we can understand it better based on the Sefas Emes, because it's the recreation of the world, it's the fixing of everything. B'tzinar HaGadol, in this great channel, that the very vitality, the essential vitality of life is flowing down through that channel. Miskala achtos shal kol hayesh b'mekoyer. The way in which everything is unified at its root is revealed. It's clear to us everything is bound up in this one story, in this one motivation of God. And in the hovering life spirit of tshuva, everything is renewed in this elevated goodness, shining, sparkling. Tshuva arises mishi'ifas hametzias kula lios yoser taivu mizacheches. Tshuva is rooted in the very fundamental will and desire of everything that is, all of existence, to be better and more refined. Yoser chasina, stronger, more resilient, and better mimasha haya, than what it was. And within this will is chavi koyach hachayim. That's the secret of life. The secret of life is persistence. The secret of life of the individual, of the home, of the family, of the community, of the nation, of the human race, of all creatures. It's the spirit of tshuva that pushes us forth. We want to be better. We're trying to figure this thing out. It's not easy. It's not easy for individuals. It's not easy for a culture. It's not easy for nations. It's not easy for the human race. But what motivates fundamentally, no matter where it pushes us, and it takes us into all kinds of wonky places as a human race, we're looking for the right thing. We want to do the right thing, even though it might lead us into the craziest places. But the motivation of everything is the desire to find the truth, the desire to live in the right way. And we're trying to figure out what that right way is. That is the force that underlies everything. This is the secret of the life force that's pushing and compelling everything to overcome the limitations of creation and all the weaknesses. And the individual tshuva of one human being, and certainly, like we've been learning, the underlying stream that flows through every particle of existence. Emes he as koyach, as drawing on the source of life, which is constantly roaring and flowing and compelling everything along. And so when we do tshuva, when we have a little thought in our mind, I want to be better. I want to find Hashem even in this place. I don't want to be nidach mimcha. I don't want to be pushed away from Hashem. Hashem, don't take your spirit away from me. In that moment, you're one with the essential foundation of all of creation. You're tapping into something that's so much deeper than just you. And in activating that, you're activating it in all of creation. And that's why, again, Chazal say, Gedola tshuva. Tshuva is so extensively expansive, shemevia refuah la'olam, that it brings refuah to the whole world. Because we activate this element, and it starts to work, and it starts to work. And so we should never think that our avota is disconnected for, that one person does one good thing, changes the whole world. The individual that does tshuva, they're forgiven, and ula'olam kulai, and the whole entire world is forgiven as well. Okay, I'm sorry for going a little bit over time. Just wanted to share that very poetic and beautiful teaching from Rav Kook with you. And Ashreinu, a huge schus to learn these teachings together as a chabura.